Hello, welcome to another video, and today I'm going to show off the level 60 HELLZERKER build. No, not much has changed. This build is still a work in reet, all the way from day one of launch pretty much. It's still going strong. It's still the main build that I use for the difficult content in this game. If I need to go hard, if I need to do a true Guardian takedown, this is the build that I take into it. It's dependable. It's very, very powerful. It's not very gear dependent either. You can pretty much take whatever gun because our action skill is just that strong. And you can guess it's ties that bind, and it doesn't rely on any particular weapons. It's very, very versatile. You can use snipers, shotguns, whatever. So I'm just going to jump straight into it. Green tree is like kind of the leveling order I'd do if you were to create a new Amara. Personal space, the closer I am to a target, the more damage I get. It says 36%, but it can actually go up to 54% thereabouts, so personal space is a wonderful skill. And I've got 2 points in clarity just to get me to Blight Tiger, so this build, it's now got Blight Tiger. It's the big upgrade that it got moving from level 57 into level 60, so that is pretty awesome, especially for the raid bosses. Now moving on over to the red tree. Steady hands increase accuracy and handling. This is going to put more shots on targets, especially since a lot of powerful weapons now have quite poor accuracy. It's free help. It's great. Better than the alternatives, and these are wonderful stats to boost up when you can. Then Infusion, always put 1 point into Infusion for the extra action skill element, the extra damage instance, but I've gone with 5 here, and that allows me to use non-elemental weapons and still get benefits from Tempest and Sustainment, and this allows me to better use elemental locked weapons such as, say, the Hellwalker, the Brainstorm, or the Reflux. And heck, even if you're trying to farm, you've only got a Corrosive Monarch, but you need it for a shock encounter, or an encounter with a lot of shields. More Infusion allows you to better use that Corrosive Monarch by turning it, more of its damage into shock. So Infusion, we're getting more and more benefits with this as we go on. The main downside is going to be, because it converts some of your damage into a bonus element, you're going to get less benefit from splash damage bonuses on splash gear. So outside of that, it's a great skill, but do keep that in mind. Next we got 5 Tempest. It's 30% damage. It's even more shock damage. I believe it's 40% shock, not 50, but either way, great skill. That's going to unlock Dread. It's more gun damage. Amara needs gun damage. And if you actually play your cards right, we've got very, very short cooldown on our action skill. You can go a very long time without reloading. So Dread, very, very, very cool. Now we need more points, enough points +1 to get us down the tree. So I've gone with Wildfire here. Wildfire is a great utility skill because it's going to be spreading dots. Now dots damage doesn't do much, that's why we don't go Animer. Dot damage to enemies is not very good, but the dot damage to the player will kill you very quickly, especially if you've got Animer. That's why I avoid this skill. I try to have as little in Animer as possible because it does you more harm than it does the enemies. So I run Wildfire, it spreads those dots, it helps stack up the consecutive hits at night as well as the Pearl. And it's also very, very good for Cryo. If you freeze an enemy, you can just freeze a nearby enemy, and the range on Wildfire is actually quite wide, not like Catharsis, which is basically a pinprick. Catharsis is not very good, Wildfire is. You can also run a point in Illuminated Fist, now that Groundbreaker is a thing, so the damage from that, you've got a reason to punch things, very, very powerful, and if you do punch them, Illuminated Fist, it's not going to increase that Groundbreaker damage, but it will give you a full heal, which it's quite handy if you're in melee range. So Illuminated Fist is actually not a mean pick. You can definitely take this. And then that's going to unlock Deep Well. It's a 1.20% mag. Indiscriminate. This is going to ricochet our bullets. Now, Indiscriminate and Ties That Bind have their own Mayhem scaling. It's not actually tied to action skill damage, so they do not get benefits from do harm, but the ricochet damage is more powerful than the original bullet, which means if you're in Fight for Your Life and you're just shooting to try and get back up, it's usually Indiscriminate that will get you the second wind, not the target that you're shooting. So it's very, very handy for Fight for Your Life and just general mobbing, so Indiscriminate is awesome. That's going to get us to Sustainment. Now, I've gone 5 out of 5, just so no matter what, if I land 1 pellet of a non-elemental gun, I'm going to get a full heal here. 5 out of 5 is, though, overkill in a practical sense. You can drop 1 point for Conflux if you're running the Harmageddon Guardian rank skill. You can also put some more points into Wildfire and Illuminated Fist as well. As long as you have 1 or 2 Sustainment, you're good. And that's going to give us Forceful Expression. It's an extra bonus element. It's separate to Infusion as well, which is great, and it's free single target damage, which is something that Amara greatly needs, so we've got enough points for Forceful Expression. I am working on another build that unfortunately doesn't take this, because it needs 2 harm, but this build doesn't need 2 harm, so we can use those points to get Forceful here, which is pretty awesome. And now on to Blue Tree. As I say, we don't need 2 harm, so we've completely dropped that and moved the point over into Violent Tapestry. Violent Tapestry is going to keep us at 25 rush stacks, and as well as improve our cryo, otherwise it's getting us down the tree. And then Fast Hands, it's reload speed, weapon swap speed, mode swap speed. It's just going to make your gameplay that much smoother. And if you are base game and using, say, a Monarch, then the mode swap speed is very, very handy for that. Transcend. Accuracy, I've already gone over why accuracy is good, and then critical hit damage. We don't have any other critical hit damage on Amara's tree, so just having some here is fantastic. You know, you gotta spread out that multiple damage types, damage bonuses, to get the most out of it. And also Transcend does stack twice with Avatar. If you double pop your action skill, you're gonna get 2 stacks of this, which is, I don't know why it does that. It doesn't say it does that. It doesn't do that for Wrath, but it does that. So, 3 damage. Always 3 out of 3 this one. This is the most important tier 2 skill here. Always 3 out of 3 this. Next up we've got Restless. Now, you might think, hey, all this cooldown rate from Guardian rank and gear and whatnot, diminishing returns, probably don't need Restless, right? Waste of points? You'd be right on the diminishing returns front, but Ties That Bind is so strong, even if you're saving just 1 second on its cooldown, that is worth it. Especially since that's 2 activations. So yeah, anytime I'm not Spec Restless because I want to put the points elsewhere, I miss it and I always end up going back. This skill is just so good and it helps the flow of Amara's gameplay because Amara's very peaky. She does a lot of damage with Ties That Bind and not as much without Ties That Bind. So this is just going to increase that Ties uptime. That's 2 points in alacrity. Reload speed is never a bad thing to have, and it gets us down the tree. Fantastic skill. Now, you can pull some points from Restless into alacrity if you don't mind losing that cooldown rate. That's kind of like open to you if you want the reload speed. But as I say, Dread, you're bypassing reload speed. You'll reload anyway in a lot of instances, so yeah, that's on you to decide. Ascendant. Soul Sap has saved my life so many times because it's not just straight lifesteal. If it was straight lifesteal, then it would be just overlapping with sustainment and it wouldn't be very good, but it's not. It's actually transfusion trails, which means it's slightly delayed. So you got sustainment for immediate healing, and then if you are unable to hit your target, the target dies and you're trying to find a new one, or you're reloading, the Soul Sap trails are going to be hitting you and healing you whilst you're doing that. Soul Sap has saved me so many times. It's a great augment with 0 downsides. Allure no longer has a damage penalty because action skill damage doesn't affect Ties, but the range isn't enough. It's not going to pull enemies into the Ties range. Ties actually has a longer range than Allure, so I'd like to see that buffed, because at the moment it just doesn't really do anything. And the last one is going to be Stillness of Mind. This is better than it was, as that 25% damage penalty is no longer relevant to us, but the cooldown still hurts, and Ties doesn't need line of sight or anything. You don't need to pick the enemies up for Ties to nuke them off of Pandora. You don't need that. All Stillness does is it's a 1 second stun, essentially, because you're going to pick an enemy up, ASCs are going to immediately drop them again. Well, 0.5 seconds later. So this is just a 1 to 2 second stun is all it is in the end, and I would rather take the healing. A 1 to 2 second stun is not worth the loss of healing through reloads, and especially that cooldown, so it's fun. The Stillness of Mind is very fun, and it's good during the Guardian takedown for crystals to just stun a group and just not attack them. Like, if I make sure my ASCs are down, I pick up a group, and I just sit there and wait. It's useful for that, but for every other scenario, I use Soul Sap. And that's going to bring us to the golden DPS 3, Wrath, extra gun damage after activating our action skill. Laid Bare, it's going to apply a debuff that allows us to do an extra damage modifier, increasing our damage. Both of these have got very good uptime. Ties That Bind, Grasp immune damage if you, like, hit a boss with ties that bind, this is going to apply. So this is very much a bossing skill. I don't know if ties triggers it anymore on the chain, since the chain, but even if it doesn't, these 3 points are worth it, because as I say, it's its own extra modifier, and it's going to help you in bossing as well, which is probably Amara's weakest point. Not that she's bad at bossing, she definitely isn't bad at bossing, but the difference between mobbing and bossing is she's got mobbing covered. So we'll put these points towards her bossing. And then we've got From Rest. It's a free DPS increase, it's extra fire rate, and there's a lot of strong weapons right now, the Beacon, the Root, etc., that use charge speed, the Hell Shock, and yeah, From Rest, never a bad thing to have. Remnant, no brainer, it's just going to nuke an enemy off the map every now and again. It's not like a damage cap here, a damage cap there, a damage cap there. It's a bit slower than that, but one thing I love Remnant for is it kills death skulls from the post-mortem very hard modifier. That's why I like Remnant. It will kill them, and if you group them up, it can kill both of them in one go. So Remnant, great skill. Only put 1 point into it, you don't need more. More points basically just increases the base damage, but it gets most of its damage from the overkill damage and the mayhem modifier, so yeah, more points is kind of a waste. Avatar. Avatar is it's probably a top 3 capstone in the game, I think, along with Megavore and Short Fuse. This is going to give us an extra activation of our action skill, which, well, we're using one of the best action skills in the game, and the extra 10 rush stacks. We're going to be using a HELLZERKER class mod. This is going to be 25% gun damage and 25% cooldown rate from a 1-point skill. I love Avatar. It's so much fun to use because of that extra activation, and you're getting so much from it. It's an extremely valuable skill point, probably the most valuable skill point here on the entirety of this skill tree. Which, well, makes sense, it's a capstone. Moving on to the gear, I am going to throw on my HELLZERKER. The HELLZERKER, regardless of what it says on the card, it says 2 and 1, sometimes it'll say 3 and 10, it's 3 and 3. 3% weapon damage, 3% cooldown rate per stack. So at 25 stacks, that is 75% gun damage and 75% cooldown rate. And that's what you get from HELLZERKER. You can upkeep that 25 stacks all the time. It's one of her best class mods in the game, it's one of the best class mods in the game, and the way it changes Rush, I absolutely love. I like the HELLZERKER a lot. If you don't have one of these, I do recommend having, I would say this is the priority for you to get first when making this build. Try and farm Gigamind or something for it, and you can get Hell Shocks at the same time. The next important thing after the HELLZERKER is going to be the passives. I go for cooldown rate, weapon type damage, manufacture crit, splash damage, mag size, weapon damage, reload speed, and finally the skills. Clarity is probably going to be your favorite here, the only green skill on the com, but the skills in this aren't very important. None of them are game changing. Anima can hurt you, but yeah, focus passives first. As for artifacts, the Pearl of Ineffable Knowledge is a no-brainer from DLC 2. It just gives you so much damage, and it is the most damaged class mod for relic for Amara. If you do not have the DLC, however, I recommend a Victory Rush, because you can get those cooldown rate passives, you can get shock or weapon type damage passives, and the extra 18% V1 from the Victory Rush effect. And you can get prefixes like Icebreaker or Snowdrift, so Victory Rush is your non-DLC choice, and if you do have DLC, definitely get that Pearl. Grenades and shields. Most important thing here is going to be your action skill end element. Remember, just use the element that the enemies that you're fighting are weak to, so I farmed up a set of its piss grenades. I do still need a shock one actually, but yeah, try and get a set of these. Farming from Funk and Sloth, it's a debuff, which is very, very handy. And that's my grenade of choice. After piss, you're probably looking at some kind of chemical sprayer one, or a hex maybe. Actually, I need to check the hex. The hex is a weird one. It'll stack consecutive hits and pearl, right? I know that much. I'm not sure how it'll interact with sustainment though. Who knows, but I recommend the piss. As for shields, whatever you want. The shield is not important. I run an Old God for the extra elemental damage. And of course I try and get as many Old Gods as I can and swap between them. But the all-in's fun for the extra cooldown rate, and if you want defensive options, you've got the Transformer, you've got the Recharger, the Stopgap even. Basically, whatever you want, just get these bonus element action skill ends. Make sure you've got 2 different elements equipped, otherwise they won't stack. So if I have shock on both, they won't stack. Now on to guns. So whilst I am showing off this Trial of Fervor gameplay that I recorded on stream, so my gamer excuse is if I died I was reading chat. We're gonna go with that one. So I'm gonna be rotating between various weapons that I had on me at the time. But when it comes to weapons in this build, use whatever you want. It's extremely versatile. You only need specific weapons when you start going into the end game, like true Guardian Takedown. And even then you can be a little bit lenient. So some solid weapons to get in the base game are going to be Hellshock. That's wonderful if you're just hitting endgame, you're just hitting Mayhem. Hellshock's a great one to get, I think I mentioned it earlier. Lob's fantastic. Hyperfocus is solid. Krakatoa is amazing. Once you start reaching Mayhem 6, you're going to have weapons like the Monarch. The Monarch is a true Guardian Takedown gun. You can pretty much solo the entirety of all the content in the game with the Monarch. Needs no introduction. The Reflux, I think, did I mention that? Plaguebearer is great. Chaosin is fantastic. Brainstorm was buffed actually, so yeah, you don't even need a Reflux. Brainstorm was fantastic as well. As for DLC 3 weapons, that added a ton. You've got the Beacon, that was a power creeped Hellshock. Well, it's around the same damage, but it can get splash bonuses, like actually receive them, so that's good. And you've got the Light Show. I love the Light Show, so much fun. Bloom's okay, I enjoyed that, I think I use that. Dakota, Frequency, Recursion if you just want everything in front of you to die. DLC 2's Anarchy and Insider are both very, very good. Insider plus Indiscriminate's a lot of fun. Anarchy is just going to trash through everything. Ludicrously powerful weapon. And yeah, anything you can get your hands on really. Flipper is great. And Maliwan Takedowns, Kibsworth, and Moonfire are good shouts as well. So yeah, I didn't want to like recommend a particular gun because the meta can always change, and also it's not what this build is about. It's not about a certain playstyle or a certain behavior of weapon. If you like sniper rifles, this build works well with sniper rifles. If you like shotguns, this build can work up close with shotguns. If you like, so on and so forth. It's a very well-rounded playstyle. What I'll often do is just pick up random weapons off the ground and use them for a bit. Are a lot of the weaker weapons leaning and relying on ties that bind? Yes. That's why we've built around it, and getting the most out of ties as we can. So we can use anything we want. The Hellwalker is admittedly not a very powerful weapon in this game's endgame, but I want to use it regardless, so I'm going to use a build that lets me use it the best. And that's kind of the thought process around doubling down on the ties that bind here, and why I'm going to create a separate build to get the most out of Phase Slam and Phase Cast, since they can actually do damage now, so I'll look forward to that. But until then, oh, Anoints! I should mention Anoints, which Anoints to go for. Consecutive hits, next 2 mags, and 200% splash are going to be your top picks. After that, if you're not lucky enough, 100 ASC is good, 50% while airborne is good, and ASC crit for scraping the bottom with the barrel, I guess. 40% Siren Rad's not terrible. I mean, it is, but better than ASC crit, I suppose. It does list as 130 on the card, but it's actually 40% in practice, so just a heads up there. Right, now I can end it. So, thank you all for watching. I know I talked a lot. This is just my favorite build that I've used pretty much launch. The build that stood the test of time has barely had any actual changes. The build that Gearbox themselves called nonsense, well, I showed them, so thank you for watching. If you've got any questions, be sure to ask them. I will be more than happy to try and answer them for you. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Absolute badass. You enjoying the show? Take them out. Building legend, one body at a time. So much power.
Are you?
Don't move.
Not today! Deep Lord! That's why I joined up! Get that hairy kick! Ivory balls! I am the spear of the twin gods! Grieve not, my kin!
Feels so good. Stay still.
That's my favorite sound!
Come on, more!
Round me, witch! Oh god, not the arm thing! I got scared! No, run!
Who wants a free kill? Feeling good?
I've got geckos! Almost there. Now you will be tested.
Almost done. Not today.